Welcome. We're glad you're with us for another episode of What's Next, Living Longer, Better, Smarter. This edition is made possible by Everest Health. Health and longevity are basic human rights. Everest Health makes it attainable by offering primary care specializing in longevity medicine. At Everest Health, individualized, empathetic, precision longevity medicine makes optimized health a possibility. They offer the health care they themselves want to receive. Let Everest Health carry the load and guide the way as you reach the peak of your health. In this episode, Healthy Aging, Actions and Attitude. I'm Fred Fishkin along with Mary Furlong. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Fred. I'm excited to have such great friends and colleagues joining us today.
They're focused on helping us to get the most out of our years. First, we'll say hi and congratulations to Sherry Snelling, a corporate gerontologist and founder of the Caregiving Club, who has a newly published book out titled Me Time Monday, the weekly wellness plan to find balance and joy for a busy life. Hi, Sherry.
It's great to be here with great friends. Thank you.
Sherry, I feel like this is a baby that's been delivered because I've
been with you
since throughout the whole process.
And you're the midwife, Mary.
I'm one of many, I think, but we are thrilled to have you and to see the book. And as I told you, when I received it, I wanted to give it to so many people who I think need it. I know it's going to help many, many people. So very excited to have you here.
And also with us, someone who has dedicated himself to that cause as well, Dr. Michael Roizen, co-author or author of five #1 New York Times bestsellers. His latest book is The Great Age Reboot, and he has a newly relaunched app titled Longevity Playbook. He's the Chief Wellness Officer Emeritus at the world-famous Cleveland Clinic. So great to see you again, Dr. Mike, as you're affectionately known as.
Brad and Mary, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you very much. Privilege is mine. And to be on with Sherry.
Well, it's great to be on with you as well.
So we're very happy to have you with us again. And the new app is what we all need. I know, Fred, you've been using it and you've seen a big difference, right?
In a lot of ways, it really is life-changing. So thank you, Dr. Mike. We're going to turn first to Sherry and her wonderful book, Me Time Monday. Sherry, there's an interesting story about the title, which actually you lifted from another book, your own.
Yes. I stole it from myself. It was actually a chapter in my first book, which came out about 10 years ago, called The Cast of Caregivers. And the whole premise of Me Time Monday was to really help caregivers understand how can you find just a few minutes of time during each day or even during the week to practice some me time, practice some self-care, which we know often gets abandoned when we take on the added responsibility of caring for loved ones. So I started that in the book, but then it became a workshop for employers and it kind of grew from there. And one of the things that I started to feel is that I was getting some great feedback back from the work group, going through this Me Time Monday process, which, by the way, the Monday is based on behavioral science of Mondays, showing that we are more successful in healthy behavior when we start new routines and habits on Mondays and then check in with ourselves every week. So that's kind of the science of Mondays. But what I was seeing is a lot of great feedback from the workshops. And then when the pandemic hit, I think all of us felt that our lives were a bit out of balance. And one of the things that I researched is there's a word in the Native American Hopi language called Kuwanakwatsi. And what that means is a life out of balance. And so the more I started to think about this, I thought, this is a great time to bring out the book that captures some of the tips and solutions that even I'm learning from my workshop participants, but also really talk about the science of balance in life and what does that really mean. And so that's really what I focused on throughout the book. And, one of the things I think is important is this whole cultural concept of Kuwanakwatsi is the more technology that we have in our lives, the more nature we need to help bring our lives back into that balance. So there's a lot of, in fact, throughout the book, I think the themes are, I'm a nerd for neuroscience, so I focus a lot on brain health, but how does our brain respond to multisensory inputs using sight, sound, taste, touch, smell? And how does nature really help calm that ancient brain that we have, that we call the ancient brain from 2 to 3 million years ago when we were evolving out on the African savanna? But what are those things in nature that really help bring about a sense of calm, and how can we infuse that into just a few moments of me time every week? So that's really the concept of the book.
So Sherry, it's been a privilege to work with you the past 12 years, I think, and to watch the evolution of the book. And I also saw you teach with me this summer. And when I asked my MBA students, I think the whole class raised their hand that they were stressed. But we know that no one has stress more than someone in caregiving, especially helping navigate around these chronic conditions. And on average, the boomers have 2 or more chronic conditions. So there's a lot of people in the caregiving, in the throes of caregiving. I didn't get it at first that the Me Time Monday was not just carving out 30 minutes of me time on Monday, but it was really the assessment of the prior week and how much time did you spend. And last week, I am happy to report I was in Montana. And so through your influence, I was hiking and walking around a lake and going to concerts in midday. And I think this nature and nurture and calm and exercise are all so important.
Absolutely. And, I kind of had 3 goals, if you will, with the book. And, to your point about caregivers, Mary, obviously caregivers, that's the cohort, the population that I've worked the most with over the last, 18, 20 years. And the focus of my first book. What I started to realize, though, as I wrote the second book, is I was redefining caregiving in certain ways. And this is not just me, this is happening within the employer space that I work a lot of. And that is that caregiving is defined as anyone who's caring for a child, all the way through a spouse or a parent or in-law or grandparent. And so there's kind of this continuum, if you will, of caregiving now, the way that we're defining it. And I broaden that and I say, okay, we start life being cared for, we end life being cared for, and in between we have these caregiving relationships. The foundation for all of those relationships is the self-care that we practice ourselves. And so the challenge again for family caregivers is to embrace this concept of lifelong caregiving and not be derailed from your wellness, and me time practices when caregiving responsibility starts to suck up a lot more of our time. So that was the first thing. Second thing with the book is, and Dr. Roizen will probably smile at this, but I felt like wellness was really getting hijacked and, consumerized in certain ways. Not to disparage the groupies of Goop and some of these other these other gurus, if you will, of quote unquote wellness, but one of the things I found is that wellness is really more ancient than what we think of. It's not a modern practice. It's not a new concept. I took it all the way back to, as I mentioned, 2 to 3 million years ago, our ancient brains being out on the African savanna, we were out in fresh air. We saw blue skies. We saw a mosaic of trees. And what that meant is I have shelter from the sun. I also can save myself from predators. We saw grasslands. So we knew that there was water source and food sources. And all of those comforted us and made us feel safe. And we have to tap into that now to really embrace, those wellness practices in nature. And then a lot of the research that I, kept going back to was from the ancient Greeks and Romans and Egyptians and traditional Chinese medicine and Indians that really helped us understand wellness that we're still practicing today. And particularly, I think like Aristotle and Hippocrates talked about this holistic look at life. So in the book, I dissect wellness into 7 elements: physical, emotional, social, intellectual, environmental, financial, and spiritual. And that seems like a lot to bite off when we're talking about wellness practices, but really it's again, small baby steps, not huge, big bites, not hours of time spent in each area, just a moment or minutes of time spent to make sure we have balance. Because one of the things I see is that wellness is defined as our exercise routine or our nutritional habits, or maybe a little meditation thrown in. That's just the tip of the iceberg, right? If we don't have spiritual wellness and we don't have social wellness in our relationships, quality relationships, you cannot have that optimal wellness that we know supports not just our health and our longevity, but also our happiness. And this kind of also brought me to the practices of, again, nature and neuroscience and what creates joy. And in the book, I call it the new joy economy because, we talk a lot about economy and how we don't have a lot of control over the economies that are happening and, how to influence those, but we do have control over our own health and happiness. And so when we talk about joy economy, it's really about that personalized practice for each of us. How are we going to invest in our health and wellness, and how are we going to best maximize that joy across life? So that was the second theme. And then, as I said, the third theme really was around this whole concept of really understanding brain health. I think that as a society and culturally, we now know so much about the neck down physical health needs of our bodies, our hearts, and all of these other things. But what about the neck up? How much do we really know about how the brain works and how that brain can be influenced in terms of stress response and more calm, managing anxiety, and also, again, eliciting more happiness? I talk about like harnessing the 4 hormones against the apocalypse, which would be oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins, and really starting to help people understand how that brain works and how we can have more influence over our health and happiness. So those were my 3 main goals with the book.
And it's not just older adults or even caregivers. You're talking about people any age, anyone.
Yeah, what I found really interesting is doing the research led me to a group in New York of Gen Z population, and they call themselves the Luddite Club. And for people who don't know what Luddite means, it was a group of people who were kind of pushing back against the Industrial Revolution and their jobs being taken away. But I thought it was really fascinating that these kids are going into the parks in New York City and they're putting their phones into a box, and then they're spending an hour or so sketching each other or painting or playing some music or just sitting there and being immersed in nature, because New York is so wonderful about so many different parks and things that it has that's accessible to people. And I find this really encouraging because this is really what we need. We need to do that digital detox, right? Technology is good and we need it, but we also need to put it away for a bit of time, and we need to immerse ourselves in more of these multisensory activities. So I'm encouraged by our younger generation doing that.
And there's been some real science in what you're doing as well. And there's so much synergy that I, knowing you both, you and Dr. Mike, in the things that you tell your readers, that I want to bring him in here and get him involved in the conversation. Living healthier lives, stress, mental well-being, exercise. Sherry's been talking about that. You talk about that every hour of every day, I think. And to steal one of your lines, eating foods that love you back. So I'll let you take it away a little bit, Dr. Mike, from what you've heard here.
Well, in fact, it's all things that love you back. And what you're doing when you do the behaviors that Sherry is talking about, that is have a posse that you love and you communicate with, and a passion for what you're doing, is that you actually are a genetic engineer for yourself. What we've really learned is the reason there are 40 things that we know that change brain function for the better if you want to do them, is that they actually, each one of them changes which of your genes are on or not. So, for example, when you stress a muscle, or when you stress your brain with speed of processing games, or when you jump and stress a bone, you're actually turning on genes in that muscle, in those bones, in the neurons that turn on repair genes. Why whoever engineered the human body did that, we don't know how they built the repair genes, but we've evolved those over time, obviously. And so when you stress a muscle and you literally tear it a little bit, and when you tear it a little bit, it sends out a repair gene. Well, it also turns on a small gene, a gene that makes a small protein called irisin that goes across the blood-brain barrier and increases your hippocampal size. That's why physical activity increases the brain. When you stress your brain with a speed of processing game, having to do something in a small period of time, you turn on the NPAS4 set of genes, which repairs neurons. When you stress a bone, you get a little mini fracture in it, you turn on a repair gene in that. That's why jumping makes your bones thicker and stronger, and your spine thicker and spine discs lubricated. So what we've learned is you are self-engineer for yourself, and taking that time. I guess that's the Me Too Monday. So, there's some simple things. You go in a corner. I was often told when I was a bad kid, in school, go in a corner and stand and face the corner. Well, when you stand and face the corner, it's an ideal time to try and stand on one foot with your eyes closed. You can bounce against the walls. You're not afraid of falling. And pretty soon, and it only takes a minute. You can't even do it a minute. No one can do it. Even 15-year-olds can't stand on one foot with their eyes closed for a minute. And so the goal is to do things that make a big difference, because balance makes a big difference to not only brain, but Fred, for white guys over the age of 65, as you and I are, I think, I don't know that you're 65 yet. But in any case,
Go up about 6 years and we're
but in any case, the point is the leading cause of death was falls. And so balance exercise, some of the things we have on longevityplaybook.com, balance exercise by going in a corner for less than a minute a day and balancing on one leg and then the other, practicing that with your eyes closed, easy way, not dangerous, and you increase brain power, which keeps you younger too.
Well, and Dr. Roizen, I'm really fascinated. I'd love your comment on this. One of the studies that I came across was done with older adults and showed that if we can practice more, what the movement is called green exercise. So, we spend 95% of our time indoors. So instead of going to a gym, taking that walk outside, and that would actually reduce our oxidative stress by up to even 40%, which then decreases inflammation, which we know leads to chronic illness. But, what are your thoughts about just getting people outside more and embracing that nature?
Anything, I have a strong feeling on this. Anything that you get people to do, that's the me time on Monday, if you will, because people don't do things, right? And so you've got to make it really easy and quick. And that's why I suggested, and if you will, the things that, whether it's a meditation that is 6 minutes or rather than 20, I know it's 6 minutes in the randomized controlled studies was as effective as 20 at reducing stress. So the key point is people say, when should I take this pill? When I'm talking to them, and it's basically whenever you remember, because it is small choices are tough, but that's why we have reminders and in fact trackers in the app.
Yeah.
I think Sherry's right. I feel different when I walk fast or try to jog a little bit outside than when I do it on a treadmill.
Yeah,
there's a difference.
There is good data on that. And this I have a anecdote to tell about that, if you will. Cudwell Esselstyn, the Esselstyn of the Esselstyn diet and of going eating nothing with a mother or a face for reversing coronary artery disease, which really does work. But it's tough to do. But so he famously is a Cleveland Clinic physician who I recruited from when he retired from doing endocrine surgery over in the Wellness Institute. And he would ride his bike, and he ride his bike outside, and he got 2 major injuries. And so I was visiting him in post ICU one day. He recovered from both of them, but they were serious injuries. He took the bike. He basically, it was, did he hurt other people or did he hurt himself when someone impinged on his bike lane? And so he took the prospect of just hurting himself, but he did hurt himself. So in his recovery phase, I said, look, I will buy you 2 big screen TVs. I'll put one here and one here so you feel like you're outside. I'll make we'll get some fans so you feel the wind in your face, and I'll give you a real course on the TVs so you can ride your bike inside without injury. And of course he refused. But the whole point is that there is real data showing a a short term, we don't have long term studies on it, a short term benefit from a stress relieving and some other functional statements on exercise in nature versus indoors. Now, the one time you don't want to do that is obviously if there's a wildfire and you're getting pollution from that outside. You can get a HEPA filter inside and make sure you don't have particulate pollution. So as long as you're in Montana, that's a good idea. In New York City, there's it actually exercising in nature in New York City unfortunately has data that the particulates antagonize some of the benefit of exercise in general. So New York City is one area, and crowded places, you live within 7 blocks of a freeway, get a HEPA filter and exercise inside.
Well, it's interesting because it's bad air in the Bay Area today, so it's a day we're supposed to stay inside.
So Mary, the key in inside is making sure, and especially if you are in apartments, not money homes have HEPA filters, but if you're in an apartment and the air circulates through from one apartment to another to another to another, as many do. That's why COVID spread and how COVID spread in the Chinese cities from one apartment up to the other. That's when they started locking down the entire apartment complex so no one could get exposed. But in any case, if you live in an apartment, many of them have circulation from one to another, in which case cross-contamination, in which case you want your own HEPA filter in your and they're not expensive to get, meaning for under $100 you can get good HEPA filters that do 1,200 square feet.
I remember when Real Age first came out, and then the Great Age reboot, and of course we had you at the National Press Club last year. I'd love to have you back again this year.
Twist my arm.
Yeah, so you signed, and I'm going to have your part of my Me Time Monday. I'm trying to figure out where we can walk on Monday, but let's talk about some of the partners you're engaging with, and let's talk about the reach that you think you have with the Great Age reboot.
Yeah, so obviously PBS has been a big special show for us called The Great Age Reboot, where we go through some of the science of the mechanisms of aging. In other words, the reason I did this, if I can take a minute, like you asked Sherry, and pardon the intrusion on time, is the reason we did this is there are 14 areas of mechanism of aging research which look like in at least 2 animal species. They've rebooted the animals from the equivalent of a human 90 to a human 40. That is, they've been able to live younger, longer. It's not extending the 90 plus period, but extending the 30s, 40s, and 50 period, your most productive time. Because of that, you want to prepare for it. So we did that with the PBS show. So PBS has a Great Age Reboot show on, and it streams, so you can get to it on streaming. But it goes through some of those mechanisms, and then the economic changes. This actually is wonderful for the country, because if you're going to live 30 years longer, you're not going to want to be retired for 50 years. So if you're going to live to 110, you're going to work 20 years longer. That saves Social Security, it saves the Medicare trust fund, et cetera. And it really makes the economy work much better, because human capital is key. And then the last part is all those things that you can do that we call self-engineering, where you change the way your genes function. And so the reach is, yes, PBS, and we're working with a number of organizations, whether it is retirement communities like the Villages, or whether it is there's a community of retirement communities. It's 10,000 communities strong. I never realized there were 10,000 retirement communities, but we're working with them. We've done a lot of work with Share Care, where Real Age is, but Share Care has helped us with the Great Age Reboot and the LongevityPlaybook.com. And, the Real Age is on 45 million phones in the US and 27 million more worldwide. we're starting to work with several major uh, Asian firms in Japan and in Korea, where they have the same demographic problems as we do, a shortage of production, if you will, productive young people. So we have to keep to get human capital enough to grow our economies. We have to have more of us older people stay active. So we're doing a lot of work with different groups like that. And we welcome it. So you can go to longevityplaybook.com if you're listening to this and contact us as well.
Sherry, I want to bring you back into this in that you both seem to advocate one step at a time, because if you start thinking, oh, I've got to do this, I've got to jump into 10,000 steps a day, I've got to meditate, it can be overwhelming. And then you go sit down and have a bag of potato chips.
Right. And I think that's a real key to creating those healthier behaviors, is not feeling like we have to bite off so much, work out 45 minutes a day or whatever it is. I think it is the smaller, pieces that accumulate over the week, and, just certain practices too. I was just explaining to Mary before we got on that very often, again, caregivers have no time at all to do anything. But if you're caring for someone, maybe you're preparing a meal or whatever, cleaning up or something, just washing your hands, washing the dishes is something so simple. We all have, dishwashing machines now. We throw the dishes in, but the soapy water, the warm water can really bring again a sense of calm. So it's small things like that, or listening to a piece of music that just kind of sparks some joy for you. Taking a moment every morning to maybe say, what am I grateful for today? And start your day with that kind of positive attitude. I think the wonderful thing that I love about wellness, and I think Dr. Roizen would agree with this, having been the chief wellness officer, the first one I think that we ever had in the country, is that wellness is really instructive instead of prescriptive. And what I mean by that is we all personalize our own wellness plans. I give you 7 elements of life to think about and say, are you doing okay in all these 7 elements, which is optimal balance? But we personalize it for ourselves. And it's really about focusing on your strengths rather than fixing a problem, which is very often what we think of in health. I've got to lose weight. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. I'm fixing a problem. Wellness is more about how can we take the things that you love, that you enjoy, that give you empowerment and agency and happiness, and how do we maximize those? So, and how do we do it in small baby steps? Just a couple minutes a day is really kind of all you need to accumulate. I talk about things too, like habit stacking. BJ Fogg of Stanford University has written a lot about this, and James Clear of Atomic Habits. But, you can also do things. Mary and I have talked about habit stacking. What I did, I wasn't doing my stretching routines as I normally was when my exercise class shut down. So every morning I brush my teeth. That's a routine I don't even think about. So now what I do is I throw my leg up on the counter and I stretch on one leg for a few minutes and then do the other leg. And all of a sudden, I've created this new routine of brushing my teeth and getting some stretching in as well.
Well, so many ideas, and, purpose, play, posse. Sherry, I want to have you back to talk about design and how you design your home for all of these different principles. And so I knew this was going to be inspiring, Fred. So I thank everyone for being here. You are part of our posse. You're the reason we're staying healthy and living longer, right, Fred?
Absolutely. The websites are caregivingclub.com for Sherry, and longevityplaybook.com is where you're going to find that new app from Dr. Mike. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Such great information and inspiration from Sherry and Mike, and we aren't finished yet. We are very happy to welcome Danielle Ruiz, CEO, founder, and medical director at Everest Health. Hi, Danielle.
Hi, Fred. Thanks so much for the warm welcome.
And thank you, Danielle, for being with us on our podcast and for also your contributions at our conferences. What you're doing is so important in the field of longevity. You're challenging the medical standard by focusing on real preventative medicine to promote healthy aging.
Yes, that's right. Unfortunately, it's a problem in the current medical paradigm. It takes about 17 years for science that's proven in humans to make a meaningful difference in health and life to actually reach mainstream medicine. And then it takes an average of 4 to 5 years for doctors to begin even using it, which means that we're more than 20 years behind the cutting edge of science that we know should make a difference in our lives. For example, blood pressure guidelines. That's something that the American Heart Association has been working hard on getting traditional medicine to accept for many years now, which is strongly affecting people's lives and health outcomes. But it takes a long time for these things to become the matter of course. And so we're really trying to challenge that. We're trying to bring science to the medical industry, to people's lives as early as possible. As soon as we know that it is safe and it's effective for humans, we make it available to our patient population. And really coming from a science background, that's important to me. It's also an issue when it comes to measures of health. A lot of the information is based on healthy white males that are young in age, rather than focusing on the geriatric population or allowing the possibility to individualize health. And so we're bringing back the research aspect of things to make sure that the measures we use are also applicable for each individual person. We really want our patients to thrive and reach the peak of potential and then maintain it for the long term. Really, if I've learned anything about people, it's that we're really capable of amazing things. The human body is just incredible. It wants to be healthy. And we just need the tools and the coaching to get back to a place of health. And then we're able to withstand challenges like COVID or our inheritance, our DNA so much better. And when we look at the history of medicine, at least in Western society, we largely focus on symptom management, putting Band-Aids on things rather than getting to the root of issues and looking at the whole person holistic sense. And we're living about 30 years, 28, 30 years longer than we had many years ago. But unfortunately, our health really isn't improved for those 30 years. In fact, people are getting diseases of aging like cardiovascular disease and diabetes much younger. Even cancers are popping up at a population level much younger. And so it really, really is time for us to bring the options that we have as early as possible to be preventative and proactive rather than waiting for these issues. So we want our patients to be healthy. We want them to be happy and productive, able to engage in the community and just squeeze everything they want out of the many years that they have to live.
Yeah, part of your efforts include what's called the Methuselah Protocol.
Yes.
What is that?
So the Methuselah Protocol was developed in partnership with the Methuselah Foundation, which is where the name came from. The Methuselah Foundation is a longevity nonprofit organization. They've been around for over 20 years, which was before longevity was really even a movement. My passion is helping people. And I also really enjoy the cerebral aspects of research. So I was offered a role as a fellow of geriatric medical research at the Methuselah Foundation about 8 years ago while I was providing direct patient care. And it just started out as investigating, discovering the research of what makes someone 100 years old. What does a 50-year-old look like versus a 20-year-old? And then it progressed into how do we measure the differences? Am I actually my age, or am I maybe younger, maybe older? And then we went into what goes wrong from a biology standpoint, from a lifestyle standpoint, and what can we do about it? And so we focus not just on lifespan, the years of life, but mainly on health span, the years of healthy life. And the answer was that there was actually a lot that we can do. The research indicates that there is a lot more we can be doing for our health than traditional medicine allows for. And at that point, I was working in a nursing home setting, and it just broke my heart, really building relationships with these patients, coming to love them and their families, and being powerless to offer more meaningful support to these wonderful aged people and give them more health, more productivity, more joy. So I really felt ethically and morally obligated to make this available to the public. And that's where we started Everest Health, to try to bring this to the public, this Methuselah Protocol, and to provide a pipeline so that we don't have to spend 8 years of your life figuring out how to be healthy. We take on that work and that responsibility to make it more accessible for people. And so what we offer with the Methuselah protocol are the measures, things like blood tests, measures of function, lifestyle factors, biological age calculators that help us to determine someone's biological age versus what the driver's license says. That can be at the organism level, and then specific organs, for example, your skin and your kidneys or your liver might be aging at different rates. And then to determine the pain points. Where are you the healthiest and where are the weak spots? And where can we optimize? Maybe you're outside of the danger zone, but that's not perhaps where you need to be to thrive until you're 90. And so we have updated lab ranges that aren't just average or what's needed for survival today, which is really where current medicine focuses, just surviving today. But we're focused on biological age, long-term risks for disease and survival, and optimizing health. And that also allows us to individualize care across genders, ages, ethnicities. We're even different people in the summer and the winter after getting a virus or when you're stressed out. So our response has to be really proactive and preventative to stay healthy rather than waiting until there's a big problem. For example, as an illustration, it's a lot easier to maintain a house, do a little bit of work every day than if you have a house that's been abandoned for years. Trying to get the house back, you may have to tear it down and start back over. The second aspect of the Methuselah protocol are the interventions, the things that we do. And they really include anything and everything that's science-backed to be safe and effective, specifically in humans, rather than just animal or cells. We focus on human research. So that includes traditional medicine, but also prescription medications used off-label like senolytics, vitamins and supplements, Eastern and Ayurvedic medicine, and complementary medicine, again, focused on science. So if we've got research to back it up, there's no reason to not include it at a population level. And we also make sure that we maintain a holistic view of health and really work to help our patients discover themselves and to not limit themselves, but to set and reach lofty goals, which involves, of course, a lot of coaching. Where we start out is very, very different than where we're working with patients a year in. So most of our patients are between 30 and 60 minutes versus the medical standard of a patient having about 4 minutes on average to talk at appointments. So we get a lot deeper and we're able to accomplish a lot more.
Another thing that's so impressive is that even as the CEO, you maintain an active role as the main medical provider, providing direct patient care. Step us through how that works. And you're based in Alexandria, Virginia, right?
Yes, that's correct. Well, as much as I love research and teaching and business building, my ultimate passion is still helping people. That's what made me get into the medical career, and that's what keeps me here. Getting to see people progress and take back their lives and their health it's very fulfilling for me. So there's no way I could give that up. But I mean, I take pride in being a good multitasker and efficient. And of course, since I'm still a fellow at the Methuselah Foundation, to stay on top of all of the exciting new research that comes out, I have to be very efficient with my time. But mainly, I have an incredible team that supports me, and they're all mission oriented to make sure that we stay on track. And it's also very helpful because we operate mainly by telemedicine. So we're able to treat people near and far. Internationally, I can lend a hand with non-medical consulting and coaching for clients. And of course, in the US, I'm able to operate fully as a medical provider, writing prescriptions, labs, and stuff. But it really is a pleasure to work with a large demographic of patients across the US and places like Dubai, across Europe, internationally, regardless of the healthcare situation setup that a country has. Longevity medicine, true preventative, precision, individualized medicine is largely missing. And really it's something that everybody wants, regardless of where we are. It's a global need. And the desire to have better health and longevity it's something that unites all of us.
And of course, you've spoken about this in Spain and places around the world. So
Yes.
We are so grateful to have you with us this morning and all the work you're doing. And we look forward to following your progress.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
The website is everest.bio, B-I-O. We appreciate Everest Health for helping to make this edition possible. We again thank Sherry Snelling. Find her at caregivingclub.com and Dr. Michael Roizen at longevityplaybook.com. We appreciate all of you for spending time to watch or listen. You can always find us at maryfurlong.com/podcasts. Remember to tell your friends and please subscribe.